Hi and welcome to this video in the QPSMR Companion Going Deeper series, and in this video we're going to be looking in a bit more depth at building variables in the QPSMR Companion. This follows on from the more basic variable video in the Up and Running series. So we have a questionnaire here with some fairly standard questions, and what we're going to do is perform 5 or 6 or 7 different things on the variables that are perhaps typical of the things that you want to do. So let's just work through this questionnaire first, just so that you're familiar with it, so that it makes sense with the different exercises we're going to perform on this list of questions. So we have a question 1, which is, do you own a bicycle? Which is a straight yes, no question. There's then a filter, which is applied to question 2 for the frequency of using the bicycle. Question 3 is a list of magazines. Question 4 is how many bicycles they've owned in the last 5 years, so that's an integer over here. Question 5, we move on to the makes they most like, but that's connected to question 6, which is the other makes of bicycles. So we've got the most here at question 5 and the other makes they like at question 6. Question 7, 8, and 9 are expenditure questions. They're all integers. And then we finally end up with 2 demographic questions. So we're going to work through some different things here and do some analyses as we go along. And we're going to start with perhaps sort of manipulating a variable that you've already got and perhaps working on that variable. So if we can have a quick look at question 2, first of all, you can see that question 2 has 7 responses. And for this exercise, I'm going to pretend that what we want to do here, we'd like a subtotal of people who say every day or most days. Perhaps that could go at the top of the list here. And then perhaps we want to collapse codes 4, 5 and 6 into less often. So anybody who's less than at least once a week, we're going to put together as one group rather than showing them as 3 separate groups. So let's start on that. And what I'm going to do, I think it's always good practice, you haven't got to follow my advice here, that what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this question here to a variable. So I'm going to insert a variable entry, and I'm going to call it, first of all, VQ2 to indicate it comes from question 2. And in the text here, I'm just going to put frequency of using bicycle. So that's my text for the variable, and I'm going to block insert the responses from the original question 2. So we go single entry, click on 2, click OK, and OK again, and OK. So I've now got the 7 responses in from question 2. So effectively, VQ2 is just a mirror image of question 2 at the moment. So we wanted to, first of all, add a response in here. So we can go up to here, and I can use this icon to add a new response after where the focus is. So that's the plus sign here, the second icon along. So let's click into here, and you can see it's opened up a new item here, if you like, in this variable. And I can either type in the syntax here in the definition box if I know how to do that, or I can select it doing tests by using the mouse, if you like, to select from the entries. So I'm going to do this through the mouse first of all, and then we'll see how we can type it in. So let's click tests, insert a test, and I'm going to pick up question 2, and I want a range of answers here, and I want 1 to 2. So 1 to 2. And I can either do that by holding down the shift key, or I can come over here and actually select the codes that I want, or type in the codes, or use the up and down arrows here. Several ways of achieving the same thing. Click OK, and you can see now in my variable now I've got this text. I don't quite want the text to be like that. It's a little bit over the top, so we can just edit this down take out that and perhaps edit that to every day / most days, and we've now added an extra row in here that summarizes, if you like, the first two codes in our question. All right, now the next thing I want to do, I'm going to leave code, the original code 3, but now the fourth response because it moved down one as it is, but I'm going to put together these three codes here. So now let's add a code that's less often for these three codes, original codes 4, 5 and 6 together. So the same sort of principle as before. Click on this code, insert a new response, and again we could type the definition here, or we can choose tests. So let's choose tests, Q2, and this time we could type in 4 to 6 here if we wanted to. Click OK, and we've now got that code in there. And again, we would want to probably just edit that down to less often. So we can just choose these three codes and edit them out. And so now we've got a variable that has the first code as it was originally and the second code, an extra, if you like, row in here, which combines those two together. The original third row or code being the fourth one now, and everything else combined together is left off, and don't know being left exactly as it was before. So we've now got a variable called VQ2. There it is in the list. We can just test it if we want to. We can do data drill down on this. I obviously need to save the project first. So let's go back and do that. Data drill down. And open the data and put that as the rows of my data. And there we can see we got 4 respondents in here, and they're coming out 2, 1, and there's 3. So that's the subtotal of those, and any less often have been grouped together. And we could obviously cross that by gender or anything else that we want to in our data drill down. All right, so that's the first exercise completed. The next thing we're going to do is to look at building a banner so that we could analyze all these questions if we want to, or some of these questions, by a standard banner on our questionnaire. Now, there's a couple of things that are worth saying before we go too much further here. One thing here at VQ2, it's important in this particular case when I've defined this variable to make it multi. Now, Q2 originally was a single response question, but VQ2 I've made multi, and the reason for that is that a respondent, although a source question is single, in this particular variable, a respondent could appear twice. In other words, they could appear for that first code and in that subtotal, so it needs to be multi, otherwise you will get errors. And the position of this variable is also important. It's important to position any variables that you're going to refer to before the point that you're storing them. So when I built VQ2 there, I was situated over Q2 so that it inserted after it. If I wanted to build a variable that used some other questions, I would need to make sure that the questions I wanted were before the location of that. And that certainly applies now to when I specify my banner. I want to be able to use any of the questions here, so I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to insert another variable. I'm going to call it banner, and the text for the question is going to be banner. And I'm going to decide that what I want in my banner is perhaps gender, age, and maybe we'll have question 1 in there. So let's look at what we can do to make that happen. Let's add a block of responses. So I'm going to add in gender first of all. There it is. So that's put gender into here for me. Now what we typically do with anything on a banner is to put a heading in. So I'm going to put in the word gender in here. And we do that by putting in the text that we want with a backslash to indicate that it's a header. And that goes before the first item. So now what that means effectively is that gender is the heading for the subsequent rows or the subsequent items, male and female. All right, let's insert something else. Let's go and insert age, and that's where it's defaulted to. And let's insert the 4 age groups. If we only wanted to insert the first 3, for example, again, we could edit this and it would just insert the first 3 for us, but I want all 4. So let's click OK to that. Sure enough, we've now got the 4 ages. And again, we'll go through this exercise of putting in a heading, age group. And it's possible perhaps here now we want to combine these 2 codes together. So a little bit like before, we perhaps want anybody who's 35 plus in one category. I could edit this and I could say that this becomes 3.4. Now you'll see here that I'm using the syntax to indicate that it's 324. And I'm now going to edit that down as being 35 plus. So it looks right on my as far as text is concerned. And we want to get rid of this one here. We don't need the 55 plus anymore. So what I've done effectively is I've collapsed 4 age groups down into 3 age groups for my analysis. And finally, I think we could block insert here, add a block of responses, pick a single entry, pick question 1, and we'll have both of those answers, put them in, and again, just put in a heading. And we put in a heading of bicycle, yes, no. And if we come out of that now, you can see we've got banner here, which means again, if I save this, go into analysis, go into data drill down, go past this settings screen, open the data file. I could, for example, put banner up as a column, and I could indeed use that other variable VQ2 that I used just now to get a cross analysis and add percentages to it. So now I've got a cross tabulation of my variable or my banner by my variable that I built just now, summarizing question 2. All right, so that's good progress so far. Let's look at something else that we can do and look at some of the more complicated things that we might want to do, although this, of course, is perhaps less likely in the real world. But let's have a look at some things that we could do in defining another banner. So I'm going to insert another variable entry now. Just click on that first, insert a variable entry. I'm going to call that banner 2 this time. Now this time I'm going to insert sort of one by one the responses that I want. So I'm going to insert a new response here. And let's say we want to pick up people who gave one of the answers at a particular question. Now, I could do that through tests, so I'm going to do that through tests. So I'm going to go into question 3 now. And I want people who picked, let's say, the first or the third magazine here. So I want people who said On 2 Wheels. And I want to insert a new test after this. So I want people who are on 2 wheels or on or chose My Bike, the third option there. Now by default it's picked and there. So what I'm going to get in this one category or one item in this variable are people who said both of those codes. If I want either, I need to edit this test and click or here, and it will turn it to people who said either of those codes. So that is an important difference to understand, that with or, I'll get anybody who gives either of those answers. With and, it'll be people who give both of those answers. All right, so let's continue. So if we go now to the next response, I could now build another definition. Now, if I want to, I could actually type this in this time. So I'm going to say people who said 2 or 4. So this time it's people who said Cycling Today or Cycling World. And I'm going to just edit that down. Okay, and arguably I should have probably done the same with that for the first response. So now we've got some interesting combinations of data. And you can keep going on from there. You can do other types of variables here. So we might want to now, let's go back to doing it in a test. We might want to pick people at question 3 who gave any of these answers. Okay. And add a second test, but not these 2 answers. And I click the negative box up here now. So I'm picking people now who have picked any of the first 3, but not the 4th and 5th ones. So now I've got quite a complex definition. So it's, just click on that. I'm going to edit that. And I'm going to just say any of first 3, but not the 4th, 5th magazines. So I've built up quite a complex definition there. And again, if I want to put a heading on this, I might put in magazines as a heading. And now I could do something completely different. So let's have a little look at what we've got over here. We might want to, for example, pick up some ranges for the amount they spend on maintaining their bicycle. That's question 7. So let's add a test for that. Here we go again. So insert. And again, we'll do this through the menus again. First time, question 7. And we could pick a range of people who said 1 to 50. So that's people who spend up to 1 to 50. Now I think I've inadvertently there left the negative on, so let's turn that off. So 1 to 50. And that completes that test. So we got 1 to 50. And we're going to edit the text here. Expenditure, maintenance. And we could add another response to that. And this time we're going to type the Q7 / greater than 50. So that's anybody who spends more than 50 on maintaining their bicycle. So that's built a variable, if you like, and it's just warning me that I haven't put a title on here yet. So let's go back to the variable. Call it banner 2, and now that will hopefully save. Okay, and we can now save that, and we can use that in a data drill down, or of course in tables. I'm only using data drill down because it's a little bit quicker to show you that in action. So there we are, there's our banner. We could even analyze banner by banner 2. So there we are. There's an analysis of the banner we set up before by the second banner, which has grouped some people together. So people who read either of those 2 magazines, and those people who read any of the first 3, but not the 4th and 5th magazines. And then we've split people's expenditure between up to 50 and over 50, or 1 to 50 and over 50. So we've got some quite detailed analysis there, and you're getting the idea, hopefully, from this of some of the complexities that you can build in to building complex variables and or not. And indeed you can go even further than that using brackets to put really complex expressions together. All right, the next exercise we're going to move on to is to start to do some arithmetic. So if you recall, questions 7, 8, and 9 are 3 types of expenditure that a respondent could have on their bicycle. So it's possible what we want to do is that we actually want to get a sum of those 3 figures to get their total expenditure. So you can see there's maintenance, spent on activities, and any other costs associated. So I want to add those together. So let's insert a variable. Again, I put the cursor here, so that we can set a variable after it. So I'm going to insert another variable. And I'm going to call this VQ7 to 9. It's going to be an integer. And the definition is quite simple. Again, I could use these functions here, but I'm just going to type it in because it's pretty easy. Q7 plus Q8 plus Q9, which sums that together, and that's going to be total expenditure on bicycle. All right, so that's completed that. So there is my new variable that sums all that together. And if I wanted to now, I could actually put that into some ranges as well. So I could now, if I wanted, insert another variable, which is vExpend, which is a single variable in ranges. And let's now try and do this in the fastest way possible. So let's insert a response. So that's VQ7 to 9. Let's say it's 1 to 50. Add another response, which is VQ7 to 9, 51 to 100. And another response, which is VQ7 to 9, greater than 100, so for anybody who's over 100. And now I put my respondents into 3 ranges, coming from the sum of the 3 items there. So I'm doing quite powerful analysis here. Again, I can save that. I can now go into data drill down again and open the data. And hopefully when we analyze that, we get people into 3 groups, which I could analyze by my banner 2 there. And you can see that I've got some analysis showing me that actually most people are over 100. But you can see the principle of what I've done there to build that variable. All right, so we're going to do one or two more things now, just before we complete this session. So the next thing I want to do with question 3 is to count the number of magazines that people read. So there's 5 magazines here with a 6th none of these. Now we've got to be careful when we're counting the number of magazines that they read that we don't include none of these, otherwise that would count as a magazine. So I'm going to build a variable first of all that just has the 5 magazines in it, so I can do the count on the 5 valid magazines. So I'm going to insert a variable here. And I'm going to call it VQ3, or maybe I'll call it Q3X. First of all, it's a multiple response variable. I'm going to block the responses in from question 3, but I don't want all 6 this time. I just want the first 5, so I'm going to step that down to 5. And if I OK, you can see I've just got the 5 magazines now, so that I can perform, if you like, a count on that. So let's click X to come out of that. And I haven't given it a title, which is a mistake I seem to make all the time. So magazines only. Effectively, this is just like a temporary variable that I want for counting. I don't really want this in my analysis. I'm going to now insert an entry, which is VQ3. I'm going to call it count Q3 actually, which is an integer. And I want to count the responses in the variable Q3X. So it's only letting me do that on multi-variables, and Q3X is one of those. And you see here you could put that syntax in there if you wanted to. And I can change this to number of magazines read. Come out of that. And now if I wanted to, I could put that into some ranges. I'm not going to do that, but we could pick up from that 1, 2, greater than 2 magazines. But let's just save it. Do a quick data drill down. Open the data file. Put that as the rows. And we can see that of our 4 respondents, 1 respondent picked 1 magazine, and three people picked 2 magazines, and it's also given us a mean score of 1.8 there. And once again, we could drag a banner into that so that we had a cross-analysis of different demographics and so on. So that's building a variable that is counting items in a variable. And the final variable we're going to build here is where we had questions 5 and 6. Now you may remember question 5 was the makes of bicycle that they liked most, and 6 was any other makes that they liked. So now I want to combine that together into one variable that has all makes that they like, whether it's the most or sort of secondary selection. So let's insert a variable again. Let's get into here, insert a variable. I'm going to call this VQ5Q6, all makes liked. Block responses yet again. Now this time I'm going to pick quick multiple OR. So what this means is it's going to OR together all of the makes from either Q5 or Q6. This is different from the AND that we've got here. The AND would mean that you wanted people who were present in both those variables. So that might be appropriate if you had a question that was, which brands have you heard of? And another question which was, which brands have you seen advertised? And you wanted to construct a variable of brands that they'd heard of and seen advertised in the last week maybe. Here we just want OR because we want the people who chose that brand at question 5 or 6. So I'm going to click on those two questions, click OK, and it tells me it's going to OR all 7 codes together, which is absolutely fine. And what it actually does is it drops out the syntax here, which you could have typed in one response at a time, which is Q5 1 answer 1, Q6 answer 1, and so on for the 7 codes. And you could have typed that, remembering that a plus sign in QPS means OR and a dot means AND if you want to type that in as syntax. So now we save that, and just as before, we could do a data drill down, or of course go on to do tables. So I should have saved it first. Open the data file, and we could pick that as the rows. And if you wanted to analyze that by question 5, you'll be able to see which ones were picked as their first choices against any choices here. And there's a cross analysis of that. And of course, you can add the percentages as before. So that completes this video. That's taken you through many exercises that you can do with variables. It's not everything, but it should give you a very good insight into starting to build variables and building more complex analysis in your QPS projects using QPS-MR Companion. I hope it's useful to you. Many other videos in this series which we'd hope you look at. Thanks for joining me.